Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Mashila, are you there?
Yes, Chair, I am there.
Thank you so much, Mashila. I just want to check that we are all audible, and I think we need to be able to get on with the meeting as quickly as because we are really under chasing time. So I want to make sure that the members of the Appropriations Committee are here. I see Honorable Skete is there. Honorable Kamete is there, Honorable Mkonto is there. I see Honorable Mwali, and the number of so in effectively, I see Honorable Bateman is on there. So I think our committee is here, and I want to appreciate the members for making it at this point. May I welcome also the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. Chairperson, are you there?
Greetings, Chairperson. We're here.
Oh, wonderful. Are your respective members here? We can't see you. We are speaking in the dark unless the system is offline.
Yeah, I'm in a compromised area, Chair, but I'm here trying to sort ourselves.
Welcome, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you so much for arranging this joint meeting. If it is all well and good with you, we will then open the meeting, allow you and the team from Home Affairs to obviously lead. I'm not sure if the ministry is on the call, etc., and allow you the opportunity to present to the committee and then move with deliberations from that point on. This is part of our consideration on the appropriation bill, and we received the communication that you'd sent to us, and we are most appreciative of the opportunity to engage. Given that there's a sitting this afternoon at 2 and various members have to travel in and out, I'm conscious of time, so we are going to have to be disciplined to get through the meeting as quickly and as effectively as we can, noting that we have to try and conclude at least by 1:30. Mashila, will you put the agenda, please, for consideration? There being no other items, effectively, that is the agenda before you. This is a joint meeting, and so is there a member on the platform from either of the respective committees who will want to move for the adoption of the agenda?
I move for the adoption, Chair.
I didn't hear who that was, because I didn't see who's there.
There's Chabani.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Is there a seconder for the adoption?
I second the move, Chair Mkonto.
Thank you, Honorable Mkonto. That being said, the agenda is adopted. Let me welcome all the respective members. Are there any apologies, certainly Mashile, from our respective committee?
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members and colleagues. We only have an apology from our colleague, Ms. Nomfusi Chaso. She is on sick leave. Thank you, Chair.
Noted. From the political parties that are here, are there any apologies from any member? No, there being no apologies, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, may I allow you to make welcome remarks? If there are any members from your Portfolio Committee who have sent apologies, I think it would be prudent for us to note them now, and then we can proceed with the order of the day. Can I hand over to you, Honorable Chairperson?
Thank you, Chairperson. My man, and welcome. We appreciate for having considered our request to seek an audience with your team. I will request our committee secretary can indicate if there are any apologies or from our side. Mr. Matonsi, before we proceed.
Sorry, I was off. I'm saying from the committee, we don't have any apology. The only apology that I receive is from the Minister of Home Affairs.
Okay, that is the apology. Just quickly, Chairperson, and a greeting to the entire members of the Appropriation Committee. We are joined here by the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Njabulo Nzunza, and joined here by Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Masiapata, and the team, and all members of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. Will not labor in terms of the issues that we are going to deal with. We'll request both the Deputy Minister and the Commissioner Masiapata to deal with. We only highlight the reasoning behind our correspondence to attention. It is on the issue of the underfunding of a Border Management Authority. And this is a matter that we've been grappling with in the last 3 financial years since it has been established. And we have grappled with the call for more funding given the task that this Border Management Authority has been given, in which it has to respond to the challenges that South Africans and all of us as members of Parliament have been raising in terms of the porous borders, and also the issue to capacitate the Border Management Authority in terms of the technology, and also on the vacancy rate that it finds itself, and also the men and women who must guard the 4,470 kilometers border lines, which they could not meet this, or there are no resources to complement the work of the Border Management Authority. And I think, Chairperson, we've already noted the progress or positive work since this entity has been established. They have recorded positive work in terms of the responding to the challenges around the 71 ports of entry. I will, Chairperson, request the Deputy Minister and the Mr. Masiapata to take the committee through with the details in terms of the presentation, given that you have highlighted time and all of us were going to a sitting at 2 o'clock. If you allow that, Chairperson, we'll invite the Deputy Minister and the Commissioner Masiapata. Through you, Chairperson.
Absolutely. Thank you and welcome. We're looking forward to our engagement. Thank you, Chairperson. Deputy Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to all the members of the joint meeting that is sitting today. We really appreciate the opportunity to come to this joint meeting and make presentations. With me here, I have Commissioner Masiapata, who is the Commissioner for the Border Management Authority. I also have Assistant Commissioner, as well as the CFO of the Border Management Authority. As you will know, Chair, that over the past couple of years, we have been having a serious problem within the security cluster, which has been the issue of underfunding of the security cluster. Now, one of the entities that were affected was broadly Home Affairs, more specifically the Border Management Authority, which is really entrusted with the responsibility of securing our borders and also securing the borderline. There are interventions that have been made. I think the Commissioner will then get more into details about that. We had prepared the business case that we had presented in all relevant platforms, but it seems as if we are still struggling with the issue of funding. Now, I must make just one point because of time before I hand over to the Commissioner, is that the funding basis for the Border Management Authority is not just money that is just being thrown away or that it does not have returns. The Border Management Authority is structured in such a way that if it is effectively funded and effectively working in our border environment, it is able to deal with issues of illicit goods that move into our environment, and that those illicit goods have a potential of hampering our revenue collection. And we believe that if we are able to fund the BMA sufficiently and we have control over our border environment, that will mean higher returns for SARS in terms of collections and revenue generation within the country, and resulting into economic growth. So this is not just a plea for money, but it is a plea for resources that will be able to turn the situation around. But I will hand over to the Commissioner to then take you through all the necessary technicalities. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thanks for this opportunity. So, Chair, just for admin purposes, if you can confirm that the slides are very much visible on screen and is on slide mode.
Yes, we can see it.
That's great. No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and let's appreciate this opportunity as the Border Management Authority to make this presentation to this joint portfolio committee, I suppose, conversation together with the standing committee. So we had actually couched this presentation as to bring yourselves into confidence in terms of the challenges regarding funding that we had experienced as the Border Management Authority, mainly in the past 2 financial years into the current, which is basically the 3rd financial year going forward. But before we then could speak specifically around the issues of funding, we then thought that it is very much critical that we preface the conversation with some bit of a contextual background that seeks to rationalize BMA's establishment, something that is fairly common and something that is fairly known. But we thought for the purposes of this conversation, we just need to bring that context, but also reflect a bit in terms of the process undertaken for BMA's establishment, which will then inform the reality around the current funding context of the BMA in relation to the state of funding that is supposed to be considered arising from this conversation. Then we'll go directly into the issues around the budgetary allocation themselves, and then we'll conclude with some bit of motivational realities. Why are we then having this request to yourselves, particularly the Standing Committee on Appropriations? So that is basically the context through which the presentation will flow. But of course, because of the time reality, we'll try to render this between 20-25 minutes or so that there is enough time for the discussion by the committee members. If we can then start by the one slide that talks to the rationalization of BMA establishment. I think it is kind of known by now that from the point of transition in 1994, we ultimately inherited a multi-agency approach in as far as border management is concerned. And on that basis, we had a lot of departments that has been sending officials at the port environment, implementing multiplicity of legislative frameworks, having different types of standard operating procedures that effectively were actually done at the ports, which were basically trying to do a border law enforcement within the context of various mandates, as it were. And I think we now know, after almost 30 years of experience, that this particular approach has been very much problematic. And today we are able to see the implications of having done border management in that context. We have seen the silos that the model has created. We have seen the fragmentation that the model has created. But more importantly, we have seen the level of corruption that the model has generated in the environment. We tried, obviously, in the past 30 years to try and coordinate these various structures at the port. 5 different iterations were attempted, interdepartmental coordinating committee, border coordination, and all of those kind of stuff. And they were all attempting to coordinate all of those structures until it became very much clear that the model does not work. And that is why we ultimately opted for an integration model. And we know the discussion started as far back as 2009 to say, let's move away from this multi-agency approach. Let's create a single authority that must then integrate the frontline responsibilities in as far as border management is concerned. It was on the basis of this reality that today we are able to confirm that indeed the president signed the Border Management Authority Act in July of 2020, which then gave rise to us today talking about the existence of the Border Management Authority. So as we speak, this BMA has been established, and of course, the responsibility it carries is sitting in more than 28 pieces of legislation cutting across various disciplines. One of the first ones is about managing the movement of persons, which talks about people who must then have proper documentation, that is immigration, that used to be done by the officials of the Department of Home Affairs, who then had to be integrated into the BMA. In the same way that the people who enters the jurisdiction in particular must be people that are free from any kind of infectious diseases. And on that basis, we have then taken over the port health responsibility, which used to be done by the Department of Health. So this becomes very much critical to be able to contextualize the issue of the budgeting that actually has to follow after this. Secondly, it has to deal with the issues of the movement of goods. Of course, in this instance, it is issues that must comply to multiplicity of legislative provisions within the context of agricultural products, whether it's animal, their products, as well as plants and their products, as well as any other products that must then enter the jurisdiction. And of course, we've also taken over the responsibility of the movement of, you will say endangered species into the Republic, but also exiting the Republic within the context of fauna and flora. And on that basis, we are then responsible for the implementation of the country's environmental biosecurity. Now, this is the kind of the responsibility that has been integrated into the Border Management Authority. Looking at Section 5 of the BMA Act, which is on screen, one of the fundamental questions that everybody asks is, if this is the responsibility of the BMA, how do you then implement multiple pieces of legislation that you are responsible for? Now, BMA Act being the overall framework law that has been created, the sections that we are implementing at the port level had then been moved out of those respective departmental responsibilities through a presidential proclamation, which then was delegated to the BMA commissioner for the purposes of implementing border laws, as it were. To that extent, Section 4.2 tells us that border law enforcement responsibilities at the point of BMA's establishment becomes the exclusive responsibility of the BMA. Something that is very much clear, and of course we are able to distinguish between the interface between the BMA and the nearest police station within the context of policing work, in the same way that we are able to interface with the SANDF in terms of border protection as well as border safeguarding. And of course, we are able to interface with SARS when it comes to issues of customs. No confusion on that. So simply put, the BMA then stands as this frontline organization that is expected to implement multiple laws on behalf of every other structure. It is for that reason that we have to then undertake a process to be able to get the organization established. This particular process to get the organization established also is embedded in the manner in which the financing of the BMA came into the fore. And this is the picture that demonstrates that reality. So we can fairly agree that there was a department called Home Affairs that was responsible for the implementation of immigration laws at the port level. They had a staff complement of over 1,200. All of those officials has to be integrated into the BMA. And that is the process that we have undertaken. From a budgeting point of view, it means that people had to come together with their compensation of employees, which is fairly salaries, together with their assets and all of those other issues. In the same way that we have done in terms of health, where we had around 339 officials that came into the BMA, and they came with their finances and all of those. And of course, the same, even in terms of biosecurity, we had around only 14 officials that we actually integrated from forestry, fisheries, and the environment, until we then ultimately also had around 372 officials from the Department of Agriculture. So simply put, all these officials left their departments, left the public service, became part of the BMA. Now, from a funding point of view, what that means is the colleagues had to come with the money in terms of their salaries. They also came with their assets, with some bit of operational budget, as it were. And that is why ultimately we set with 1,950 employees, and all of these officials were more frontline officials, meaning operating in all the 71 ports of entry, of which we know 52 of those are land, 10 of those are international airports, and of course, 9 of those are seaports. We also know that in the context of that responsibility, we also have to do work in the border law enforcement area. That is 10 kilometers from internationally recognized border line, as it were. In terms of land, we talk about 4,470 kilometers. In terms of sea, we talk about 3,900 kilometers. And of course, in terms of sea, we do 10 kilometers inland, but we also do 12 nautical miles into the sea in as far as border law enforcement area is concerned. As we speak now, all the integration ultimately happened. All of those officials are now under one entity, single command and control. What used to be departments, now it is responsibilities within the BMA under a single command and control, and we call those issues work streams, as it were. And that is why you will realize those work streams of immigration, port health, environment, agriculture. Now, the only thing that is missing here is the issue regarding conventional law enforcement, which has been done by the members of the South African Police Service, which is called border policing. That is an area that is not concluded, but in that particular area, we can confirm that there is staff complement of just around 4,000 that are doing border law enforcement as we speak, sitting at a budget of around 2.2 billion. So that is an area that is still outstanding, and that is why, from a funding point of view, the BMA could not necessarily get that. So that remains an unfunded mandate in the BMA context. If you then look at the next slide, with the little money that we got within the context of us starting the organization, we had to do something in the conventional law enforcement. And that is why we're able to recruit around 600 border guards ultimately. And we only have around 50 coastal guards. You will see the spread of the coastal guards around our coastline, and you will see the spread of the border guards around our land ports, as it were. And if you look on the right, that is a demonstration of where their deployments are. If you look at the responsibility, you look at the capacity, you will realize that there are challenges. Now, with this background, we are then able to move into the issues regarding the financial realities. What does it mean? Simply put, when the BMA kicked in on the 1st of April 2023, we ultimately had people coming into the BMA, as I've indicated, with their salaries and everything, and the money they came with was sitting at just around 1.2 or so billion. And that is what is sitting there in the first quadrant of 2023-2024. Now, obviously, we were requested to put together a business case that has to go into the National Treasury with the view of getting new money into the BMA, with the view of, in a way, allowing it to be established and allowing it to do the mandate as per the BMA Act. And as you can see there, the scientific process we undertook led us into at least a requirement of around 2.9 billion. So what needs to be very much clear here, the 2.9 billion as required was within the context of new money that needed to come through to establish the entity. The 1.2 or so is what came with the officials as integrated. And ultimately, I'm glad that Madam Wilson is part of this conversation from the National Treasury. She knows the conversation very well. The Treasury indicated that the fiscus is constrained. They do not have the 2.9. They only have 250 million. And that ultimately is what the BMA was given in its first year, of which, if you were to look at it in the medium term, it was to become what we describe as 900 million. What does that mean? It means in the 2023-2024, we were then to get the 250 million as the new money. In the next year, which is 24-25, we were to get 300 million, meaning addition of 50 million. And then in the outer year, which is the year we are in, 2025-2026, we were then to get 350 million. And that is the status quo, as it were. So in other words, we are saying in the first year, we only got the 250. And that is what was expected to get the organization established. And that is why we still stand today to indicate that things had been very much difficult in as far as this reality is concerned. Now, if you are to move to the next slide, you will realize that in the next slide, if you look at the current financial year, that is 25-26, despite the business case that we have presented, which is what the next slide is going to show us, which actually was sitting at around 4.3 billion, ultimately that could not also go through. And that is why we end up with what in the current financial year is 1.7 billion. Now, when somebody looks 1.7, will think that there is a new injection in the BMA in terms of funding. The reality is there hasn't been any. The 250 million that you can see up there is the money that came from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure that was then transferred into the BMA, because according to Section 38 of the BMA, we are to take responsibility in the management and the maintenance of all of the infrastructure in the land ports. In the same way that if you go to the airports, you do have Airports Company South Africa. In the same way that if you go to the seaport, you have Transnet National Ports Authority. Now, in the land ports, you will then be having the BMA as the landlord. And that is why this particular allocation, which was sitting in the DPWI, has been moved into the BMA. But in terms of the new money, still, it is only the 350 that we have spoken about, which was rolled over into the medium term. And that is what gave rise to this particular conversation today, to say, when it comes to the conventional work that we are supposed to be doing, still we remain grossly underfunded. Now, if you are to move into the next slide, we are basically disclosing something here. And the reason we have to disclose this to this committee, particularly the Appropriations Committee, is to indicate that when we realized that we had challenges, we could not just throw the hands into the air, but we had to do something. So what we had to do, we went into CARA, which is the Criminal Asset Recovery Account, being managed by the Department of Justice. This was in 2023, to say that we have realized that we don't have the money to kickstart the organization, meaning that we can't buy vehicles for the organization, we can't buy uniform for the organization, we can't buy literally any other thing, let alone the guns and the everything as a law enforcement authority. And at least we went to CARA, we requested 500 million. We wanted to use it to buy the tools of trade, in particular, to kickstart the organization. But even then, they said they don't have 500 million, they only have 150 million, which at least we were able to be given that money. And that is the money that has actually bought every other thing that you might see us using out there in doing this border law enforcement work. Whether we talk about the prison carriers, which are the vans that we have bought to be able to carry the illegal migrants as we intercept them, whether it is the issue of the firearms that the colleagues are actually using, whether it is the body cams that you might have seen together with the drones and all of the other issues. We had to buy these things through CARA. And that was on the basis of augmenting the allocation, which was not necessarily sufficient for us to be able to carry the mandate as given in terms of the BMA Act as well as the proclamations. Now, with that as an understanding, we are saying in the current financial year, because we are in the same situation where we don't have any allocation, as we speak now, the last bullet here tells us that we have done the latest, which has been submitted just last week or so, into CARA again, and we are requesting them to say, give us at least 3.4 billion, and that is to CARA, on the basis of us wanting to also again augment the tools of trade. You will remember that CARA is not going to help when it comes to human resources in terms of bringing the people, because CARA is a different kind of a money, and it is used mainly for once-off issues, which in this case will be for the tools of trade. However, even if we have put our requirement as 3.4, it depends how much CARA has in the kitty before we can even talk about what they will actually allocate. So if you find that CARA only has 3 billion, obviously it's not only the BMA that will have applied for CARA, it will be the police, it will be the military, it will be any other structure. And therefore they might still say, we can only give you 50 million as an example, depending on what is in the kitty. And that is what we are just saying in this instance. Again, we have also attempted to send to CARA, and this is still rolling. There is no any response as yet, because we have just submitted last week. So we had to also disclose this particular reality as part of this particular journey. Now, if you then move into the issue of why are we talking about the need for the funding of the BMA? Now, we talk here about the reality that we are sitting with. And this reality is that in 2023, when we had to develop a structure of a new entity with the mandate that the BMA carries, we had to take this through the processes within the entity, but also into other environments within the value chain. And the structure as approved, it said that for us to be able to kickstart this work proper, we were supposed to have at least a staff complement of around 11,000. Now, that is what the structure tells us, and that is in line with the responsibility that we are given according to the Border Management Authority Act. Now, because we had to kickstart this journey by integration, then we can indicate that we were able to have 2,138 people integrated into the BMA. Remember, 1,900 are those people that we have spoken about. And the reason why it is now a bit higher is because there are people that were employed into Home Affairs to establish the BMA. And that includes the commissioners and some of the support staff. And that is why we are sitting with them. So in the first year of BMA's existence, we were then sitting with a vacancy rate of 80%, meaning out of the 11,000, we're only sitting with 2,000 or so people, sitting with the unfilled positions of 8,900. Once again, if you look at that 8,900, you will understand that if we were able to integrate the 4,000 police officers, as indicated earlier, that amount would have been half. And therefore, the vacancy rate was also going to be sitting very much low. But because that did not happen, that is why we are also sitting with this particular reality. I don't want to go technical into this conversation. The only thing I can indicate is because we have integrated people that were frontline in the back office, we had to try and create capacity where we must then start appointing CFOs. We must start appointing the CAEs. We must start appointing the CIOs, all of those kind of people to be able to get the organization running. In the first year, there was no money. And therefore, Home Affairs became our back office, wherein we had to go back from the department to assist us to run the organization. Up to this point, we can still indicate that we are sitting at 2% back office staff that are supposed to run the BMA. That is why we are only having 56 officials. The reason why we have not collapsed and the reason why we are still standing is because we invested in technology, particularly in terms of the back office work, and we have automated a lot of things. And that is why we are able to spend and still be able to do this work. If you look in terms of the last financial year, 2024, again, the vacancy rate was sitting at 76%. The reason why we did that is because we brought in the 400 border guards that I've spoken about. 200 of them came in 2022, 400 came in 2023. That is why if you look at the third quadrant that talks about 24-25, we talk about now 2,600 staff is because we brought the 400. The 400, we actually took them in as the border guards as trained. But when we were supposed to absorb them, when 2024 kicked in, we realized that our business case did not go through and therefore we don't have any money. So we had an option of taking half of the 400 into the BMA's border guards. But we also realized that it's going to be problematic. That is why we decided to then downgrade them, even in terms of what is supposed to be their compensation. And then we absorbed them as junior border guards. And that is how we ended up with a rank or a level called junior border guards. That was never an intention, even when we started in terms of the structure. We created it because we wanted to absorb all the 400 border guards. And that is why we set at 76%, as it were. In terms of the current, that is the current status quo, as it were. And again, we continue with this particular reality, as it were. Now, this particular slide is starting to demonstrate the model that we use in terms of the business case. We only look at 3 levels when we develop the business case. We look at ICT because that becomes fundamental, especially in the current environment where you will need to invest in technology to make sure that you are able to do border management in the same way that other jurisdictions are. As we speak now, most of the activities are still very much manual across all of the various specializations, as it were. Again, you need some specialized human resources. Here we talk about your environmental biosecurity specialist, agricultural biosecurity specialist, port health, which are environmental health practitioners. But again, you talk about immigration officers, but you also talk about specialists in the back office. And as we speak now, despite the integration, we are still very much bleeding. And the last one is around issues of tools of trade. As a new entity, which is supposed to be the third national armed law enforcement authority that is standing in between the defense force and the police, obviously on the basis of the work that we've been given, being trained 50% military and 50% police, we needed to have certain tools of trade. And some of these are highly specialized. And here we talk about your kind of guns and all of those for us to be able to do the work. As a new entity, we didn't have any of those. And therefore, we had to get some funding to be able to start procuring those. But again, the business case for the past 3 of those did not go through. And I suppose that is the rationale why we have this meeting. Now, what is it that we've been saying around the issue of the nature of the investment required in the BMA? We are saying, despite the people that came into the BMA from other departments, we need some kind of an investment that will enable us to build some kind of a baseline, particularly for the fact of the staff. And that is why we are saying, if you look at the 2,600 people that we have, you look at the 11,000 that are required, you can then agree that you need at least around 500 million to be able to create a baseline. By the way, the majority of these people are supposed to be frontline. These are supposed to be coastal guards. These are supposed to be border guards. And these are supposed to be men and women who are supposed to go out there and, I suppose, implement border law enforcement and deal with this whole scourge called border or porous borders, as it were. And that is the baseline we're talking about. So the 505 as done is fairly to look at the various areas of human resource capacity. I don't want to go technical, but the only thing I can indicate is, from a corporate service point of view, we need people in those specializations. We need ICT people. As we speak now, there are only 8 people that are supposed to be running ICT. We need specialists in the finance, back office, supply chain, and the like. But more importantly, we need people in the front line. Agricultural specialized function, as I've indicated. We need people in terms of health specialized function. And I want to separate the health one, Honorable Chair, very intentionally by indicating that we only have presence in 36 ports of entry when it comes to port health officials. And if you understand the reality of the port health issue is, any individual entering a particular jurisdiction as provided by International Health Regulations of 2015, as put together by the World Health Organization, everybody must be assessed and everybody must be screened, whether they have any infectious disease or some kind of a communicable disease, lest they import it into another jurisdiction. But as we speak now, we are only present in 36 ports. If you are to minus 36 out of the 71, you will then get to realize that we don't have officials in those other places. As we speak, people enter the Republic without being assessed in as far as this is concerned. And of course, there is immigration. National Targeting Center is our back office where we have to do analysis in terms of understanding the threats around people movement, the threat around goods movement, also cross-border related crimes. Again, in this particular space, we don't have any capacity, except that we do have only 3 individuals. And this is the investment that we are talking about. That is just in terms of HR. If you move to the next one, this is ICT. The reality of it is, we are saying in the ICT context, we are sitting with an environment where we have inherited very old systems, particularly from the Department of Home Affairs in terms of immigration. They are sitting on a network that has been SITA-based, which is State Information Technology agency-based, and we know the challenges in that particular space. As an entity, the good thing is we are operating outside the public service. We can be able to get private enterprises to help us to actually modernize our issues of ICT across the ports. But unfortunately, we have no money to do that reality. And that is why we are saying at least a once-off of around 400 million. That will enable us to at least bring in latest technology. Countries out there, they already talk about what you'll call e-gates. Countries out there are already talking about facial recognition in their airports. But ultimately, we are still sitting with the old systems, particularly systems procured during the 2010 World Cup. And that is where we are saying that is the kind of investment we are looking for from a BMA point of view. The rest we are saying is just going to be support and maintenance, so long as there is a once-off investment that will enable us to move in as far as these issues are concerned. Other specializations, everything there is manual, whether it's health, whether it's agriculture, whether it's environmental, everything is manual. And again, in this day and age, we need to move with speed and be able to catch up with other jurisdictions. That is why we are talking the way we are talking. Obviously, the last one is the tools of trade. Here we are saying we just need some bit of an investment to the extent that if we get around 51 or so million, it will enable us to be able to cover some of the issues. The reason why we are speaking the way we do is because we do know that there is still this CARA provision that will enable us to be able to do this particular procurement. As we speak now, even when you look at the issue of thermal scanners as an example, jurisdictions are using latest technology. When you enter into their countries, you literally walk into a full body scanner that must be able to pick up any kind of a possible infectious disease. On our case, we are still using those things that you put on somebody's forehead. I mean, it's very scary if we are to be very much honest to ourselves. from a jurisdiction point of view. And that is why we are saying these are the kind of issues we are looking at. The issue of drones, we know now we only have around 4. We've been able to deploy them according to risk modeling. They've been able to assist us to be able to start changing the environment. And of course, this is all the work that we have done. So let me then move quickly towards concluding so that there is time for deliberation, Honorable Chair. And this basically leads us into a summarized provision in terms of where we are. In this particular slide, we are summarizing our requirement. This, as it is seen on this screen, is exactly what we have submitted to National Treasury in view of the 2024 financial year, 2026 going forward. And again, this is the latest business case as we presented it to Treasury in the past for the current financial year going forward. And out of this particular one is the one where we did not get anything out of it. That is why we are saying, if you look at 2023 going to today, we are sitting at 4.3 billion overdraft, practically speaking. The reason why it is coming to 4.3 is because we did not do the 2.9 in the first year. And we are saying, if we are to equalize ourselves to where we are or we are supposed to be today, 4.3 will at least assist. We are talking about at least over the medium term, meaning 24, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, we are looking at around 3.2 billion investment in terms of human resources. We are looking at 757 million in terms of ICT. We are looking at 350 million in terms of tools of trade. And all this comes to 4.3 billion. But at the same time, we are very much rational. We are saying we do know the fiscus is constrained. And we then say, if we cannot be able to afford 4.3 as a country, at least we can try 2.2, meaning in the current financial year, we get 1 billion, the next one we get 750, the other one we get 500. Then at least we will start to demonstrate that we are at least starting to deal with issues of border management. And we are saying once we get that amount, 40% of it will go to HR, 30% will go to ICT, and the last 30% will go to tools of trade. And that is basically what we are presenting to this particular committee, as it were. And we do believe that there should be a bit of traction. The last slide we want to share is, if we decide not to actually consider this thing that is put on the table, this is just the last slide that is basically telling the truth. And the truth that we are saying is, we are going to continue dealing with issues of smuggling across the value chain. And that is a reality. As we speak today, we know that the illicit goods movement into this country had continued for the past 10 or so years to strangle the formal economy. The illicit economy has been growing in ways that are very much undetermined, because there's no any scientific work done in that context. But what we know is that the formal economy has been stuck between 1% and 2%. And we can be very much clear in this instance. And I think you will be aware yourselves. If we don't decide to do things differently, and this thing continues in the way it is continuing, there is no way the economy of this country can be turned around, unless if it might be out of economics. The issues of cross-border criminal realities are felt even by communities. We try our best to do this work in the capacity that we have, and we are at least able to get some feedback up to this point. And I don't want to also be very much technical. If you look at the health risks, very much scary in that context. As we speak now, there is a bit of a re-escalation in terms of mpox, as it were. We do know that some of it is imported, but some of it is in-house. But the key issue is we should be able to up our game in terms of protecting this republic from any kind of health-related risks, as it were. And I think we all know about the children that were dying at some point, having procured things with things that were brought into this country illegally, that continue to kill children in the republic. All of that work, the genesis of it is at the ports, as it were. And of course, the impact in terms of economics is also very much real and very much practical. And of course, the issue of environmental risk is also reality. And the issue of food security is being accounted for in as far as this part is concerned. Now, this is, in short, the presentation in as far as the business case of the BMA is concerned. And there are a lot of other technical issues we can talk about. But because of time, I think we can stop here. Suffice to say that we want to indicate to the committee that the mandate of the BMA is very much clear and very much real. And we are therefore saying that we are still motivating until this day to yourselves that there is a need to look at this particular space and be able to say, what is it that that can be done to be able to deal with the issues. If there is no new money, where can we go and get some bit of money in the system and be able to say, at least we're able to get 1 billion from that particular space and be able to bring it in this environment? Because in any event, ignoring this particular investment will continue to have an impact across all of the other various streams. The Department of Health can actually testify the impact of illegal migration in their space. Correctional services will testify the impact of illegal migration in their space. And I can go on and on in terms of the other areas in the environment. And we are saying, let's invest in this particular space so that we can help the ecosystem in the country, as it were. And that is basically where the presentation ends. Thank you very much, Chair, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Doc, thank you so much for the presentation, Commissioner. It is well received. I'm almost certain now we've got I'm not sure, Chairperson, whether there were other presenters or whether is it now we are heading into deliberations.
No, Chair, I think that's the only presentation before this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me allow members then to proceed with a number of questions if there are others. I think it's important for context purposes to say that we are guided by the Money Bills and Related Matters Act, which in and of itself gives us an opportunity to look at the Home Affairs budget vote, but also look at it in the context of the other votes that are in place. Ours is not to increase the spending envelope. So in other words, that is not the job we'd be able to do, because any amendment that the committee makes is made on the basis of the fiscal framework as was tabled earlier on. Therefore, amendments and adjustments come within that space. And I think this conversation, given where it sits, will have implications on the medium term, both in the inner year and the outer year. The program that the BMA puts forward, they cannot be understated. And I think the objectives of the legislation that empowers the Border Management Authority certainly are things that require adequate funding. So I want to put that context so that when we ask questions and deliberate, they are confined within that space. To discuss other program issues is not going to serve our deliberations well, given the 11th hour we're having this conversation. In the light of that, let me recognize honorable members that are on this platform. Honorable Mkonto, Honorable Kamete, Honorable Wakelin, Honorable Ross, Honorable Mohale, if I'm not mistaken, Honorable Bateman, Honorable Kalega Mazibugo, okay, Honorable Lekanyane, and then Honorable Ngubane. May I ask members, given the time constraints, if we certainly will need to find responses, if members can confine themselves to at least 2 minutes. I know that sounds restrictive and unconstitutional, but just looking at the speakers list that is before us, just the questions. If we just take the questions alone, we're already on 25 minutes or so. And once we've taken those, it means we will really have to close the meeting and go to the House. So may I ask if members can constrain themselves to 2 minutes? Let me start with you, Honorable Mkonto. You can set the pace and the standards as you usually do.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, to you and the co-chair, the DM Nzunza and his team. Chair, the 80% vacancy is what I'm worried about. And to say, Chair, we support the idea of the BMA. And but the reason, Chair, the EFF doesn't support or agree even with the NHI idea. We are not disagreeing with the idea. We are disagreeing with looking at the system being not ready to implement a certain idea. Because, Chair, if you listen to the whole presentation, it means there was no thorough planning, there was no thorough consideration of many things before the BMA was established. So they have been mentioning the National Treasury as to they have been seeking funds from the National Treasury. But my question is, Chair, the Department of Home Affairs does have revenue collection programs or activities. Have that been taken into consideration? And to say, Chair, maybe they have to go back to the department has to go back to the drawing board in as far as the BMA is concerned, and then maybe in the outer years, and after considering the spending, doing the spending reviews of the whole government institutions and entities, then they can be able to be assisted. It's just to say, Chair, we appreciate their presentation. We understand their frustrations. We support them, and one has never imagined the type of frustrations that they have presented today. So going forward, Chair, we are going to support them, specifically in the outer years. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mkonto. Honorable Kamete.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I'll try and be short, sir, because I heard that you recommended that take 2 minutes. No, considering the historical challenges of fragmentation and corruption that led to the BMA's establishment, how can the South African government ensure that the BMA, despite its current funding limitations, does not inadvertently revert to or perpetuate similar inefficiencies in its new integrated structure? The second one, the presentation emphasizes that inadequate funding is a significant concern and risk, leading to increased national security, health, and economic and environmental risk. Beyond financial figures, what quantifiable metrics or impact assessments are in place or could be developed to clear demonstrations to National Treasury the long-term cost of this unfunded risk versus the investment requested? I'm raising this, Chairperson, because if you look at the consistent underfunding of the BMA as evidenced by the significant disparities between the requested and allocated funds, like 2.9 billion requested versus 250 million received in the financial year end of 2023-2024, possesses a substantial and clearly articulated threats to national security, health, economic stability, and environmental protection. My recommendation, Chairperson, would be to say the Portfolio Committee for Human Home Affairs and also the Standing Committee on Appropriation should not only note the MPA's motivation for critical funding, but actively engage with National Treasury to advocate for the full allocation of the requested 3.4 billion, emphasizing the potential compounding national risk outlined in the presentation if the BMA remains under-resourced. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Kamete. Can I have Honorable Wakelin?
As you can see, I'm just outside, so I'm just going to switch off my video. Chair, every single illegal foreigner that is kept out of the country is less strain on the health, less strain on the economy, and more jobs for us, for our own people. And it's on that interest that I would like to say that we need to find a way supporting the Border Management Authority. We need to find a way that will, at the end of the day, assist our own people first, which I think is important. And I want to make a plea with you too that we will interrogate the current budget and ensure that they are fully funded. We ensure that we, at the end of the day, have a proper economic system that is done with legitimate people in this country, and that we are serving the people that are legitimate in this country as far as medical concerns, health is concerned. And then also, Chair, I have been tracking this authority for a while now, and I can tell you that the results within their own constraints are phenomenal, and I think it's important that we note it. I also would like, just on a personal level, say to the Commissioner, I want to thank you for his passion and his energy of today's presentation. We can hear in your voice and can see that you are passionate about what you're doing. And I want to ask, Chair, that we in the adjustment process engage on this fully, and then recommend that we somewhere in the adjustment process see if we can find a way to assist you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Wakeling. If we can then have Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this opportunity to the committee. Chair, I think it's important to note that the BMA, although it's a new entity, what it has served to do is just bring together the entities, the separate entities that were running at these borders already. And what it highlights is that there's been a chronic underfunding for many, many years. So it's not like there was a new entity formed and then suddenly it didn't have money. This has been going on for a long time. And I think the critical thing for an appropriations committee and looking at the budget overall is the impact, the direct impact on the fiscus that a BMA has. For example, if you look at the 2020 parliamentary response on how much is spent on deportations, it's 250 million rand in the financial year on deportations. In 2022, there was another answer to a parliamentary question where it said 40,000 immigration offenders were processed in a year. So if you look at how much it costs to process each case and detain, that's about 560 million rand in that year. And then there's also research that shows informal remittances, which is a massive outflow out of the country, out of our economy. And the estimate is about 20 billion rand plus that leaves South Africa informally each year. And so there's really a massive opportunity cost as well when we don't invest in something like the BMA to close the gap, that it's putting significant financial strains on other government departments and causing expenditure in the amount of hundreds of millions. I think Honourable Wakeland touched on it, but if we look at just the experiment in December of getting drones at the borders, and that had an impact of over 200% increase in interceptions on our borders in December. And so I think, Chair, it's critical to fund these force multipliers. The challenge here is clearly that the salaries take up almost all of the budget. And so we need to look at these force multipliers as well. They've already shown some success in the December period. But overall, Chair, I think it's to look at the impact on other government departments when we consider that how much is allocated to this department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ross. Honorable Mogale.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me appreciate this opportunity to also speak on this platform. And greetings to all my colleagues from the Home Affairs. And
Honorable Mogale, at the risk of interrupting you, we can't see you, so I never like to assume it's AI that is speaking. We like to see human intelligence.
I'm not in a proper position to be on camera, but I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee as well.
Oh, you
No, I can
proceed,
confirm.
Honorable.
I can confirm, Chair, that is Honorable Mukhali.
Okay, you keep going, Honorable Mogale.
Thank you, both of you, my chairpersons. No, Chair, I think we all can agree that there's been a serious problem in terms of the funding of the Border Management Agency, which should play a very critical role in terms of dealing with some of the challenges we have at our borders. And I really think that the underfunding of the Border Management Agency poses, a serious and incredible risk to our state security in many aspects, Chair, because of the flow of illegal goods, and not just illegal goods, but illegal firearms that are flowing into the country and posing a serious threat to the lives of ordinary South Africans. And socially as well. I mean, we have seen what is happening in other parts of the country with clinics being shut down. We might not agree with what is happening, but fundamentally, what are the people protesting against? They are protesting against the porous nature of our borders, and they are porous because the BMA, which was established in 2023 to deal with these issues, is not being sufficiently funded. And it's a shame, really, because, I mean, they've been approaching the National Treasury, I mean, for years now, requesting for additional funding to be able to execute their functions. Chairperson, I just want to highlight this to you, that in terms of what they have available to perform their functions, 44 patrol vehicles, 22 motorbikes, 22 quad bikes is what the BMA has now currently to patrol over 4,800 kilometers of our borderline. I mean, all of us will agree that is not sufficient. That does not in any way cover, deal with the issue of illegal inflow of undocumented people into the country. So we're really appealing to the committee of the appropriations that whatever can be done, I mean, if the National Treasury could find funds to allocate for the national dialogue, I mean, we should really be able to have funds available to fund this critical institution as the Border Management Agency. Also, from an economic perspective, Chairperson, I think the Deputy Minister spoke to that we should also look at it from that angle in terms of what are what are we losing by not having an efficient border management agency? I asked a question to the Minister of Finance a few weeks ago, which fortunately he responded to, and that the evidence they have with them is that from between 2015 and now, the cigarette industry was in 2015 they were paying close to 13 million or collecting close to 13 million 20 billion in terms of tax revenue, but currently they are collecting less than that, and that is also because of the cigarette smuggling that is very rampant at our ports of entries and our porous borders. And lastly, Chair, we all know that there's serious issues of corruption at our ports of entries. There's serious corruption there. But how is Border Management Agency going to deal with these corrupt officials who are doing all these illegal things if they don't have the budget to procure a simple thing such as a body camera? Body cameras can go a long way in terms of reducing the corruption that we all complain about at our ports of entries, where at OR Tambo, we are told at OR Tambo that corrupt officials are charging 30,000 to allow illegal undocumented people into the country. So those are the other aspects that we should also consider, Chairperson, as we really make a call for the Border Management Agency to receive funding. We really hope that this conversation and discussion will really yield fruits in terms of availing the much needed resources for the BMA to be able to execute their functions. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, we've got you, Honorable Member. Honorable Galega Mazibuko.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to run through my questions. Greeting to the Minister and both the chairs, yourself and the Chair for Home Affairs, Chair. Chair, my first question is about, the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, CPIC. under the DTIC is responsible for ensuring that partners in the fight against counterfeit goods are capacitated and supported to enforce the Counterfeit Goods Act, we know, Act 1997. Given this background, Chair, has the BMA ever considered requesting assistance for capacitation from the CIPC, given its role in fighting against the counterfeit scourge? And my second question, Chair, the team presented capacity limitations, outdated technology, cyber insecurity, and constrained fiscus as some of the key risks confronting the BMA. While the presentation covers the implications of these risks for the country, there was no analysis on the implications of these risks for the BMA's planned targets for the 2025-26 financial year. Why? Or if I can put it differently, if these risks are not mitigated, would the BMA be in a position to realize its planned targets for 25-26 financial year? If not, Chair, why were the planned targets set for the current year under review before these risks could be addressed? That's my second question. And my last question, Chair, considering that IDNL, which is a state-owned enterprise, is mandated to work with border management agencies in keeping our borders secured, are there any collaborative efforts between the BMA and DNL for the purpose of ensuring effective and efficient border law enforcement at ports of entry as you presented? Moreover, most of the tools, Chair, the tools of trade for the BMA requires to fulfill its mandate are manufactured by the very same DNL. This begs the question, has the BMA ever considered leveraging DNL to procure some of the required tools of trade on credit or discounted prices, given that they have the same mandate and there's inadequate budget? Lastly, Chair, agreeing with you, BMA was established to deal with national security issues. Therefore, it needs our support. Not only the BMA, but also the sections within Home Affairs that are dealing with corruption. There's a counter-corruption session in Home Affairs. It also needs, because it deals with what the previous speaker has spoken about. We have seen their outcomes. We have seen the officials that have been arrested through this counter-corruption unit. And all these units that are meant for the security of the country or national security are supposed to be supported. I agree with the support. We need to do our best to support BMA and in terms of securing our country. We know all the problems. We can't unpack and allude to the problems now because of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Karagamazubu. Honorable Khanyan.
Chairperson, good afternoon to you and the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs and the Deputy Minister here and all honorable members present here. The speakers who have spoken before me in support of the request by the department and the BMA have taken my words, Chairperson. So I will say that recognizing the importance of the BMA in the security cluster, in their input in the South African economy, and also their collaboration with SARS and other related institutions, I will urge the committee to declare its support behind the BMA as a very important intervention that is helping our country, and that we also propagate for them to be given more financial support. If it's not going to be possible in this period, going forward into the medium-term budget
policy statement. This is a matter which we cannot ignore, Chairperson, and I fully support the request of the BMA. If there is anything that we can do now, we should do it immediately for the BMA to get the financial support that it requests. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Khanyane. Honorable Ngubane.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I think this is the real conversation. Before I get into involved, greetings as well to both chairs, to the Deputy Minister and to all colleagues. I think this is a real conversation we really need to be serious about and talk about it. Sometimes when we go on podiums and we do politicking and we tend to mislead and try to sell an empty package. All the problems we have, I've always emphasized that. It's pity sometimes it looks like we are politicking. All the problems we have in South Africa are because of our borders, our open-ended borders. This we request as MK, we are emphasizing again that BMA must be funded. It's been underfunded unfairly all along. And this conversation, board chairs, is a very serious one. Please, I plead with you that even whatever BMA has asked, let's try by all means to fight for this amount, that they get all the funding they need, so that we curb everything wrong that is going on in this country. Because if our borders can be strengthened and the BMA can be strengthened and not be weakened, we'll have a turnaround time of making things better in this country. The major thing I wanted to emphasize on, I don't know whether the Appropriations Committee or whoever, or Minister of Finance as well, on our request, we can assist on this. In most times, some departments have leverages on directives where they give either the president or the Minister of Finance can give a directive to a department. There are departments here that have tasks that belongs to the BMA. The department like Department of Defense, Forestry and Fisheries, SAPS and others. These people were doing tasks that are now needs to be allocated to BMA. And those tasks that they were doing has some allocation of fund or have some staff within it or some element of rands and cents within it. Somehow we need to look at it so that we can top up of what the BMA is requesting so that they can meet exactly all the requests they need. That these departments be given directive that they must secede or transfer all those tasks to the BMA, because we keep on ignoring this element, and it's a crucial one, which will assist BMA as well to have all its tasks gathered in one entity. I think we need to look at that, Chair, as well, to say how can we give directive or ask the President to give directive or the Minister of Finance to give directive that all these tasks that belongs to the BMA must be transferred together with the amount it has to the BMA. And as MK Party, we support this request for this budget, and we request as well that all of us here, let's be in one unison so that the BMA becomes a very helpful and functional entity to curb all the corruption and all the ills that are happening with illegal immigrants in this country and the borders that are porous borders that is happening. BMA is the solution for this problem we're having. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Skepte, and then Honorable Bateman, if we can be brief.
No, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. My question, Chair, is that when the BMA was handed down these multiple border control functions, previously split between government departments, which includes the Home Affairs, Health, Agriculture, and Environment, was there any memorandum of understanding between the authority and these departments that the BMA will be given all funds required to consolidate all border control functions assigned to it? If not, why did the authority assume unfunded mandates that have clearly become underfunded from these departments? That is my first question, Chair. The second question is that if no solutions are found to the BMA's budget constraints, does that mean the government would have to reconsider the existence of the BMA and return the border control functions back to the departments. It doesn't say I don't support, we support this, but I'm asking these questions for the committee to understand these issues. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Skete. Honorable Bateman.
Thanks very much, Honourable Chair, and thank you to the presenter. Welcome to everybody this afternoon. I agree with the sentiments that have been expressed about the importance of the BMA. I agree it's critical that we fund the entity. I won't elaborate on that because I think the points have been very well made. I just want to make 3 points, though. Firstly, I don't feel as the Standing Committee on Appropriations that we are sufficiently capacitated to deep dive into the basis of the numbers that are put in front of us. And the Treasury has a team that is able to, I believe, do that. And I think we need to ask the Treasury to provide us with feedback on the costings that have been provided, on how thoroughly the numbers have been worked, and that the proper due diligence is done on the numbers that are provided to us. I also think we need Treasury to recommend where we can save in order to fund this mandate from other programs or departments, or reassign resources from other programs or departments. And then I also just want to flag that the audit outcomes from the BMA are concerning. The most recent audit report I could find was the 2023-24 audit report, where the auditor says, I was unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that general expenses had been properly accounted for, as the public entity did not have adequate controls and systems in place. This was due to poor record keeping, lack of adequate reconciliations, and a lack of accounting documentation. I was unable to confirm general expenses by alternative means. Consequently, I was unable to determine whether any adjustment were necessary to general expenses stated at 246 million, as disclosed in note 16 of the financial statements. And there were also 2 other qualifications, one on leave and one on accruals. And I would like to ask the BMA what is being done to address this. As critical as the function is, it's also critical that the department is and the BMA functions are well managed and that it gets clean audit outcomes. Thanks very much.
Thank you, honourable members. I think before I ask the Commissioner to respond, Commissioner, and perhaps maybe the Commissioner will respond. And what I would like to say, given the time, it is now, we are really beyond VAR time because we have to get to the House. The only point I'd like to make is perhaps maybe concurrent with the point that Honourable Bateman made, is that as far as the money bills is concerned, what I will commit the committee to doing is 2 things. The first is I will formally, Mashile, if I can ask that we formally write to the PBO to do the analysis and some of the programmatic issues that sit within other departments. I'm cognizant of the move of the 4,000 police officers into the BMA. That would deal not only with the question of staff vacancies, but it will deal with some of the budget allocations into that. I'd like to interrogate where the defense allocation as far as border management is concerned. And given what other members have raised about the nature of technology, this could be a process that we unpack so that we get a figure that is guided by what the Parliamentary Budget Office is able to give, so that when we have an engagement with National Treasury, it takes into cognizance both the presentation done today, the report from National Treasury, and then also in following the money bills conversation, we can then deal with the function that speaks to the minister concerned and the Minister of Finance. So the Minister of Home Affairs and the Minister of Finance and any other related department. So that is the one thing that I believe we need to do. I will be realistic and say part of the targeted date would be to look at what we do in the medium term budget policy statement, whatever the nature of adjustments will go into, given the fact that the budget votes are in fact taking place on the 23rd, which is next week, Wednesday. We can't sit here and presume that we'll be able to get through the Money Bills and Related Matters Act prescribed process to get the appropriations done. So I make those comments rather than putting questions before you, because I think the questions are sufficient, but I just wanted to give where the committee will come from. Commissioner, you will have about 3 minutes. If I can ask any other responses, we can table those in writing. And if we can get those before close of business, our committee will consider the report tomorrow morning for its own adoption. And then we can begin all the other ancillary or subsequent processes that I've described. And then I'll give the closing remarks to the Deputy Minister. And then we should be able to get to the House, those who need to get to the House. Commissioner?
No, thank you very much, Chair. We really appreciate the opportunity. And yes, indeed, Honorable Chair, what we will do, yes, we will then put together the responses based on the issues raised by the members in writing, because I suppose with the time that is here, it's not going to be that possible. The only thing in the 3 minutes that you have given me, Chair, I thought maybe the first thing or the thing that I might want to reflect on is what Honorable Bateman had said, because that is a very fundamental point that he has made, particularly in giving members of parliament the assurance. The annual report that Honorable Bateman is referring to is not the 24-25, but is the 23-24. So in other words, that is the inaugural annual report of the BMA. And I want to indicate that all of those issues that has been raised by the Auditor General in that particular year were effectively dealt with consciously so in the 24-25 financial year. And I think when the 24-25 financial year report is issued, then you will be able to see that difference. But there are very clear reasons. By the way, we'll be going to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs to present that report, and will be very much detailed in terms of the issues. But what I can just say for now, in terms of the time constraints, is to indicate that is the year we got established. And that is the year we're supposed to get the 2.9 billion to establish those governance things they're referring to, but also to bring in the back office people to be able to enable us to do the work. But when that year kicked in, that is when we got the 250. And with the 250, the instruction was, Home Affairs must still be your back office, meaning our supply chain activities were actually managed by the Home Affairs. When it has to come with the accountability or the accounting, we had to then go back to the department to be able to balance out the figures in between us and the department. And that is where there were those kind of issues, including things like leave, because there were too much paperwork on leave that the departments were still having that needed to come through to the BMA, that needed to be captured, leave accruals. So those were basic administrative related issues because of the transition. And it was not to demonstrate that there was some kind of money that kind of disappeared. But we will talk more on detail when we do the annual report. That is the only thing that I can say, Honorable Chair. Because of time, suffice to say we are very much ready to go to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs for the 23-24 report. We are going to talk in detail in terms of all of those aspects. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we really appreciate the comments from the members. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Can I ask Deputy Minister, I don't know if you would like to put some closing remarks?
No, thank you very much, Chair. Just to indicate that we take the vote as has been indicated by the Commissioner in terms of responses in writing for most of the questions that have been asked due to time constraints. But just as a departing point, is that we are not waiting for ourselves to be fully funded before we can actually carry out operations. We are doing the best that we can with the limited resources that we have. We do understand that ultimately resources are limited, they are not unlimited. And as such, we need to make the best that we can with the current resources that we have. So operations are continuing, but we are not at a level where we want to be. I think the route that you have also alluded to, Chair, is suffices for us. I think we'll just take that route. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DM. And I think, this is one of those areas we have this permanent debate about whether an insufficient budget is it helpful or hindering. And in truth, in this particular instance, an insufficient budget is actually not helpful, because many of us who travel in and out of our borders, even through airports, we see the Border Management Authority, they pretty much look at you in the eye to decide whether you are carrying the right passport, or you are healthy to come into the country, whether through inappropriate thermal scans or any of those other burdens. So in this instance, insufficiently funding BMA can actually be harmful rather than helpful, because it then has the pretense of safety, but it has none of the effect of it. And so I do think it's with the same urgency that we take the discussion forward. Honorable Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for availing the time, and we certainly look forward to further engagements. As I've articulated a process going forward, we will then go and put the exercise in the mechanisms as I've described, both with Parliamentary Budget Office and National Treasury, and then we'll take it from there. Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to end, and then I think we do need to close the meeting. I see there's a hand that is up from Honorable Mohale, but let me allow the Chairperson to speak, and then he can guide me.
No, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, firstly, for giving us an opportunity as members of the Portfolio Committee. Secondly, also, your summary in relation how we're going to move forward. And without waste of time, we'll engage further. The Border Management Authority by this afternoon, they will submit all the issues that were requested by this meeting, so that in your engagement, at least you have a better sense of the details that are coming from the Border Management Authority. We want to appreciate the audience that has been created. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Honorable Mohale, unless it's procedurally crucial, I'd like to close the meeting.
No, Chair, I just wanted to ask Honorable Lekhanyan if you saw what happened in 113.
You see, Honorable Mohale, you are being ungovernable.
Out of order.
I knew that. I knew, Chairperson, that this matter is coming.
Chairperson.
Honorable Lekhanyan, I think we can discuss this measure off record.
Congratulations to Honorable Mohale, but how will I learn?
Please take this intra-caucus or in the House. Honorable members, with that in mind, I want to thank you. It is now just before 2 o'clock. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, DM, and we'll respond in writing, both from your responses and our response. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.